Hey everybody, it's Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick. You're listening to your Morning Coffee, the podcast. Weekly music news for the new music business by two longtime Cheap Trick fans, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchard. We were Jay's first concert, 8/13/77, right Jay? Portland, Oregon? I don't know. Have a nice day.
From Eliza McLam, inside the digital marketing agency that creates your musical taste.
And from Luminate, the architecture of affinity, how Instagram facilitates music super fandom.
And from Jared Brenner at Forbes, the Taylor Swift effect, why music deals are getting shorter and smarter.
All this plus our friend Benji Rogers drops in with his latest daily active user Substack post, Music from Other People's Music. Well, Jay and I are really glad you're here. It's a warm, sunny day here in Southern California, and we're going to start episode 296 right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Good to see you, Jay, on this lovely day, my friend.
Good to see you. By the way, that music that you're listening to, that is Cheap Trick, the best thing. And we'll tell you why in a second. It's part of a story that's coming up. And that was Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick with that cool intro. By the way, Best Thing is from Cheap Trick's latest album called All Washed Up. Great album title. You got the wash machines on the cover. It's really great. The band was featured in a fantastic piece by our friend Steve Knopper for Billboard this week, and the headline was "The Glory Days of Music Videos Are Over." So why do artists keep making them?
Yeah, so to document Cheap Trick's last ever show at the Budokan, that's the Tokyo arena that helped make the band famous with its Cheap Trick at Budokan album back in the 1970s, the Rockford, Illinois rocker spent $12,000 on a 4-person film crew last October. The resulting music video, The Best Thing, a sentimental look at the band's lengthy relationship with its Japanese fan base, has drawn 77,000 YouTube views, generating only a fraction of the money necessary to buy one of Cheap Trick's guitarist Rick Nielsen's signed 5-neck guitars. But revenue wasn't the point of the exercise.
Yeah, that's right. The band's manager, Dino Paredes, said, You look at this like promotion. The whole point is to capture the relationship between the band and the culture. Clearly, on the business side, it isn't always a great return on investment. That said, the best thing is an evergreen, he said. And as for those 77,000 YouTube views, he predicts that, quote, if you and I talk in 10 years, we'll probably add a couple zeros to that number, end quote.
Well, videos cost $20,000 or from $20,000 to the rare $1 million superstar production, according to Mike Chester. He's the GM over at Warner Records, who adds, I'm not approving $1 million videos very often, hardly ever. Others in the music business put the range between, say, $30,000 and $250,000, with occasional big budget videos costing as much as $850K. Woo.
Yeah, and you and I were talking before we hit record. Most of the budgets are substantially less than that. But aside from megastar hits, most music videos don't move the needle. Lizzo declared on TikTok last September, adding that she made a video for her song STFU, but released it only on Instagram for this reason. The golden age of music videos is over, and actually it's been over for a long time. There will never be another Thriller.
Oh, I'm kind of sad about that, Jay, to be honest. But
it was an era.
It was an era.
You talk to some of these artist managers from that era, and they just needed to get a really great music video, and that could be their airplay. It could drive a tour.
Absolutely.
It could drive a new release. The times they are changing.
They are changing. But as we met, we were again chatting before we hit record. You had mentioned that music videos now, we have the tools in our pockets. When we were doing that in the golden age of music videos, you had to have a full crew come in, and it was an expensive endeavor, and then you had to edit it, and it was a big job. And now we can do it at home. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I wonder how many people have the patience,
Well, that's another question.
We don't have the time. Everybody is just, they don't have the attention span, with 8-second canvas videos and all this short form video, reels and shorts and TikTok and all of that. I feel like younger people, especially today, don't necessarily have the time to sit through a music video.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head in that observation for sure. Another special bonus episode of the podcast is now live, a Your Morning Coffee podcast special episode, a conversation with Pete Ganbarg. You had a fantastic conversation with Pete this week. What a cool dude.
Yeah, that was really great. Pete is a 2-time Grammy Award-winning record producer, A&R executive, music publisher, university professor, president of Pure Tone Music. What doesn't he do? Anyway, it's a fantastic conversation with another music geek like us. I think you'll really like it. Don't miss this one.
Indeed. You can also check out his Rock and Roll High School podcast. That is also very cool.
Yeah, it's really great. The people he's interviewed, incredible. This week in the Your Morning Coffee newsletter, there were 3 stories by our friend Russ Krupnick, Russ from Music Watch. So all 3 of these stories are in the newsletter, these pieces that he's written. And I wanted to let our listeners know that coming up this week, we're going to have a special episode, a conversation with Russ Krupnick. So that's coming up. Look for that next week.
Yeah, another special episode coming soon, a conversation with Mitch Glazer. He's the chairman and CEO of the Recording Industry Association of America. That's the RIAA. Before we jump into the big stories, Jay, a little TikTok development. This is a piece in Music Business Worldwide from Mandy DeLugdug. TikTok to let U.S. creators sell personalized videos in-app through its new Cameo partnership. The integration allows TikTok creators to sign up for Cameo without leaving the platform and add customized call-to-action buttons to their TikTok content, through which fans can request customized videos.
Yeah, this is a really interesting development. In case you don't know, Cameo is a platform where, fans pay to, receive short, personalized video messages, from actors, celebrities, athletes, musicians, comedians, creators. Fans can request videos starting at $25, and according to Cameo's website, it's now fully integrated with TikTok. And before we jump into the stories, one last thing. There was some really interesting SoundCloud news. They have this new thing called follower exclusive releases. And SoundCloud is introducing this feature. Again, it's called Follower Exclusive Releases. It's a new feature that allows artist pro level creators to share tracks exclusively directly with their followers, either for a limited time or indefinitely. And it really sort of turns a follow into early access for fans. I thought that was very cool.
Pretty cool indeed. Hey, let's thank our sponsors, Jay. We are so fortunate to have them. Support for the show comes from Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. It is founded by Bruce Houghton. Hypebot is edited by touring artist and publisher Jeremy Young and supported by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Yes, sir. Bands in Town. Now over 100 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist services platform, connects over 700,000 artists with their fans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to promote their tour dates across all platforms. By the way, Apple Music has now all of their concert listings via Bands in Town.
Yes, indeed. But I got to say, my favorite day of the week is the day that we record the podcast, and I get to do it with my good buddy, Jay Gilbert, music business consultant, educator, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and the Warner Music Group.
Yep, and I get to do this show every week with my good friend Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Groups.
Right on. Well, let's jump into the stories, Jay.
Yeah, we've got some good stuff this week. The first one, this is from our friend Benji Rogers. Benji, he's co-president of Surreal, and we had a special episode talking about Surreal.ai not that long ago. He's a partner in Lark 42. This was the lead story in the newsletter this last week. It's the latest post from his daily active user Substack, and it was called Music from Other People's Music. And Benji was kind enough to record it for us. Let's listen in.
Imagine a black box. It doesn't need to be big. Now imagine that some brilliant engineers get hold of copies of most of the music humans have created, and then put those millions of songs into the black box. They then charge people between $10 and $30 a month to reach in and pull out new songs made from pieces of all the others. It goes well. People pay. The company's customers produce millions of new songs a day. The business model works. Money floods in. The idea spreads to video, to more black boxes, more subscription revenue, and more synthetic output at an industrial scale. Then another group of engineers shows up with an X-ray machine. They can look into the black box and precisely identify which bits of which songs are used to create each new song the black box sells. If you own music, you can see how it's used and, in forensic detail, how much of that $10 to $30 should be yours. The black box becomes transparent. Owners can be paid when their works are used. Some large rights holders sue the black box companies to stop them. Others strike deals for some money and maybe a little equity. Still, they don't know which songs are being used or how much of each. Oddly, when shown how to see into the box, they decline to use the technology. Some won't even test it. More perplexing, the biggest black box makers pairing video with music aren't being asked where the old music they are using to make new music came from, or what they might owe to its owners for that use. This is not fiction. I've yet to meet a rights holder who knows with clarity whether Google, Meta, TikTok, or OpenAI is using their musical works as outlined above. I've yet to meet anyone who has even asked those platforms to clarify which works they're using. Meanwhile, giant data sets are available and in use to train deliberately opaque models. Why wouldn't major rights holders want to know what's in the box? One plausible reason. Looking might reveal that what drives all of this new song generation and the money flowing from it doesn't primarily come from their catalogs. Their market share doesn't translate into attribution share. Models crave novelty, indie creators, especially songwriters, may contribute more to these models? If so, those who don't control indie catalogs would have a smaller slice of the music from other people's music pie. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky. As the great one said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Accordingly, you will miss 100% of the use cases you aren't even looking for. But so-called black box model makers will miss neither the value they create for themselves nor the data it provides them to improve their models. As AI creation scales, larger rights holders will likely still own a proportional piece of the pie. Their works are what people ask to imitate, and they can charge accordingly. They can promise, quote, robust reporting, end quote, and my favorite bullshit term, guardrails. But when it comes to sovereignty over how and where works are used, giving up the control provided by accurate data seems foolish, especially since the cost of transparency and ease of implementation are negligible. As I have written before, we face two worlds. World one, we know what happens in the black box. Those who charge for access adopt the technology that shows what's there and what's owed, and they pay accordingly. World two, we don't. So let's drop the pretense. If you see an AI-generated video with music underneath, those images and that music came from other people's images and music. If you read an AI-generated poem, that poem came from other people's words. Strip away the marketing, and we're dealing with stuff that people own, being used to create things that other people monetize. So if you make things, and technology companies sell subscriptions and build massive valuations by rearranging what you made, what could matter more than knowing how much of that value belongs to you? Whether it's a settlement, equity, or ongoing revenue, it begins with a simple question. Is your work in the black box? How much of it is being used? What is it worth to the company that charges users for access to it? There's no technical barrier to answering that. In the end, there are ways to license that respect creators, no matter their size or representation. Rights holders only have to ask.
That's awesome. Thanks, Benji. Very, very cool. Another interesting article from the team over at Luminate, The Architecture of Affinity, How Instagram Facilitates Music Super Fandom. So Meta sought to understand the impact of Instagram on music and artist engagement, both on and off platform, and chose to partner on a study with Luminate, the insights and analytics firm behind the Billboard charts.
Yeah, by combining Luminate's comprehensive music consumption metrics and consumer behavior data drawn across streaming, physical sales, and radio play with Meta's internal user engagement metrics, the findings provide new data-backed insights of Instagram's impact on the music ecosystem.
So in the first post of a two-part series, this case study focuses on the foundational role of Instagram, too, in enabling super fandom. So first of all, a hub for superfans. Instagram has the highest concentration of superfans when compared with its social media peers, with an especially high concentration among Gen Z consumers. So 1/3 of Instagram daily music engagers are superfans, with figures rising to 38% among Gen Z.
So let's talk about music streaming growth. Artists who leverage Instagram see 7 times the music streaming growth rate of the average artist. Specifically, the median streaming growth rates year over year for an artist who leverages Instagram is 23%, compared with only 3% for the median overall artist.
Well, and it's a high-value music audience. Instagram's daily music engagers spend and listen more relative to the average social media user. They're more likely to attend concerts, pay for music subscriptions, and buy physical music like vinyl. Through a strategic multi-phase partnership, Meta and Luminate measured how Instagram's high-value music audience yields greater off-platform streaming for engaged artists.
Yeah, this is interesting. Luminate defines a superfan as someone who engages with music artists in at least 5 of 13 unique ways. These behaviors include attending live performances, purchasing physical merch, serving as a primary word-of-mouth ambassador. Follower accounts matter, but they're only the starting point.
Well, this study reveals nearly 1 in 3 daily music engagers on Instagram qualifies as a superfan, a rate almost double that of the base audience of music-engaged consumers. That's 18%. This concentration is even more pronounced among Gen Z or younger, where the figures climb to 38%. Hence, Instagram provides artists and labels one of the highest value music audiences in the social and video space.
Yeah, they go on to say that moving beyond consumer survey metrics, Luminate research also shows a correlation between Instagram activity and streaming success. Artists who engage with Instagram see a median streaming growth of 23% year over year. This is significantly higher than the 3% growth seen by the median artist overall during that same period.
Well, what about the value of the Instagram music audience? So this study highlights the value of the Instagram audience's willingness to support artists financially. Compared with the average consumer, daily music engagers on Instagram spend more time and money on music.
Yeah, it's not just that. It's live events. 45% attended a live music event in the last year versus just 32% of the base audience.
And physical media, 21% bought vinyl in the last 12 months, nearly double that of the base audience, which is 12%.
Right, and let's talk about listening habits. On average, 81 hours per month is spent listening to music, significantly higher than the 53-hour average of the base audience. That's a fantastic breakdown by our friends at Luminate.
No, really interesting. Really interesting. Our next story is by Jared Brenner over at Forbes. The Taylor Swift Effect, Why Music Deals Are Getting Shorter and Smarter. So for decades, the standard record deal was the industry's version of a life sentence. You signed over your masters in perpetuity. The label owned the copyright until the sun burned out. And if you wanted your rights back, you had to rely on the 35-year federal termination window under the U.S. Copyright Act, a ticking clock that could suddenly sever an investor's ownership.
Yes, but as Taylor Swift's highly publicized re-recording campaign and Frank Ocean's strategic contract buyouts have shown, the leverage has violently shifted. And we're entering this era of the short-term master license, and it's turning the traditional one-sided 360 deal model on its head.
So they start by talking about the 15-year itch and the recoupment trap. So the data is clear. Most hits generate the lion's share of their revenue in the first 15 years. Labels have finally realized that owning a recording forever is a diminishing return if they can instead capture the peak revenue window and then exit smoothly.
For those with enough viral heat and fan engagement, we're seeing a massive surge in deals where artists demand reversion of master rights after a set period, after a decade or so after the term ends. This evolution makes the recording industry function more like a music publishing, where reversions and catalog acquisitions are par for the course.
Well, but do not think the majors are giving up without building a moat. To prolong their control, labels are aggressively hardwiring matching rights, strategic deal extensions, and profit-based buyouts into these short-term agreements. More dangerously, they will mandate that your account must be fully in the black before they hand the keys back. If you haven't recouped your advances, they will simply extend their hold on your masters.
The smartest creators are now negotiating the absolute right to write a check and buy out their unrecouped deficit at any time to force that immediate reassignment. While artists are clawing back their rights, Wall Street is treating those exact rights with a new level of reverence. Since 2020, we've witnessed over $8 billion in music royalty securitization issuances, with $3.5 billion closing in 2024 alone.
Well, you may ask, why the sudden rush? Because in an unpredictable financial climate, music royalties have become the new gold bullion. Thanks to improved data transparency and stable recurring streams from an estimated 827 million global subscribers reached by 2025, music is efficiently being packaged into asset-based securities. Institutional investors aren't gambling on discovering the next breakout global superstar so much as actively targeting the 73.3% of global streams that come solely from catalog content. Though these are reliable, predictable legacy hits that pay out like a municipal bond.
Interesting. The next subheadline is the ARPU problem and the Active 360 threat. The pure subscription model is facing structural ceilings. Goldman Sachs is already revising its industry growth forecasts downward, flagging a stark reality. While emerging markets will drive 75% of net subscriber growth by 2035, the average revenue per user in those territories is a meager $8 compared to $31 in developed markets. Factor in the structural data risks like the estimated 1 to 3 billion manipulated or fake bot streams polluting the platforms, and the traditional streaming pipeline is starting to show cracks.
Right. Well, the industry's legal response? Re-architecting the deal to directly target the superfan. Deal makers are rapidly moving away from relying on the standard $10.99 a month subscription and pivoting toward heavily differentiated revenue streams like short-form video monetization, direct-to-consumer superfan apps, and VIP live experiences. This is where the legal challenge for creators become incredibly dangerous. Labels used to be satisfied with a passive 360 deal where they simply took a percentage of touring or physical merch while the artist did the heavy lifting.
Yeah, but now they want quote-unquote active rights. They don't just want a passive cut of your tour. They want the right to operate your fan club, control your VIP ticketing packages, and own the rights to build an app based on your brand, even if that app has absolutely nothing to do with your music. You must ensure the legacy 360 deal doesn't secretly morph into an all-encompassing brand takeover where labels capture an unfair slice of your direct fan relationships.
Well, if you have the leverage, non-music revenue streams and active fan club operations must be aggressively walled off from your record deal. Wow. The bottom line, your art is your equity. Link to the whole story is in the Your Morning Coffee newsletter. Really interesting stuff. And I remember, it takes me back to when I was at Warner's. Remember when REM left IRS and went to Warner Brothers?
Yeah,
and,
big deal.
And I didn't know it at the time, or maybe I heard a little bit later that that deal was the masters reverted back to them after I think it was 20 years or whatever it was, and that was just like, wow, how about that? That's called leverage right there.
Yeah,
leverage.
100%.
All right, our last story, it's from Eliza McLam. Inside the digital marketing agency that creates your musical taste.
Yeah, last week we covered Kristen Robinson's story and podcast about Chaotic Good, the company Chaotic Good, and the founders that she interviewed, where she shared how marketers simulate trending songs, and by doing that, they control the discourse. So the headline for her story and podcast, Inside the Secret Tactics Digital Marketers Use to Make Songs Go Viral in 2026. There's one update that came out after this piece was written, and Eliza writes that one day after the piece went up, Chaotic Good made significant changes to their website, including pulling the narrative campaign section completely down. Some of the artists that she writes about here no longer feature on the website, though it's not clear if they're still clients of Chaotic Good. She writes, my suspicion is that they are, and that their managements made the smart move of removing public associations with the company.
Right. Eliza writes, that being said, some of the examples I cited here can no longer be traced back to their website, but feel free to use the Wayback Machine or similar to check my work. If they had it their way, music business executives would rather not deal with the fans at all.
Right. And that Wayback Machine website is really great if you want to see past versions of websites. So she writes that fans are a complicated, messy, unpredictable group. Amen. Sometimes they love a record, sometimes they hate it. Sometimes they love the single and hate the record. Sometimes they love the record and hate the single. They're teenage girls, they're old head uncles. It's Gwyneth Paltrow. It's the guy checking your groceries at the Safeway store.
I always wondered about that guy.
Yeah,
their communities are niche and complex. Their tastes form not only by the artists they listen to, but by the opinions of other fans. As an executive, you can inflate the charts, you can buy streams, you can buy vinyl, though who even cares about that? You can even pay people to crowd the shows once or twice. But for any art worth your investment, you will eventually need real people to reliably, measurably, and genuinely care about it.
Yeah, absolutely. She writes that in the dream world of an executive, fandom is something like a parasitic disease, contagious through mere exposure, trafficking quickly between hosts and immediate contact with little or no external intervention. This way, the executive needs only to create, it's easy for you to say, a patient zero and watch the snowball gather material. The disease would spread seamlessly, easily, and it would be viral.
She said, last week I came across a Billboard interview with the founders of Chaotic Good Projects, a digital marketing agency that promises to create virality by, among other things, manufacturing hundreds of fake fan accounts for musicians.
Yeah, Alex Warren and Somber are, to no one's surprise, clients of Chaotic Good Projects. These two are part of a new mainstream, broken primarily by algorithmic social media platforms through Chaotic Good's client list, although includes more established pop giants like Dua Lipa, Shawn Mendes, and Justin Bieber. The careers of these people, while obviously influential in my industry, are not really what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the people who made it without capitulating completely to commercial demands, whose personas don't eclipse their work.
She said people who are making stuff that's simultaneously viable enough to be profitable and still uncompromising on a vision. She says, I'm interested in the real rock stars, if we have any left. She says, the first time I heard Cameron Winter's Love Takes Miles, I probably heard it 100 times in a row. I had found it in a week after its release and became immediately convinced that I was one of the few people in the world who knew about this perfect, beautiful little secret. At the same time, the song had just under 1 million streams, and I was obsessed with showing it to everyone.
Yeah, Love Takes Miles was worked as part of a narrative campaign by Chaotic Good. A narrative campaign is one of the 4 kinds of services the agency provides, the others being UGC, of course that's user-generated content, fan page, and brands and media. According to the agency's website, they also worked narrative and UGC campaigns for Geese's record, Getting Killed.
She says, when I discovered that the same media apparatus propping up Somber and Alex Warren, the term propping up here is used intentionally. To me, there is almost nothing compelling about these artists aside from their aggressive social campaign, was also boosting Cameron Winter and Geese. I was shocked. I thought this was the kind of thing that was only deployed in service of mass market commercial pop. Secretly also that this was the only kind of music such marketing would work for.
Yeah, she goes on to write that I have no doubt that these artists could have ascended without the assistance of Chaotic Good because they're great musicians and a lot of people enjoy their music. But the industry has changed. Quote unquote, being heard is not just about putting out music or even promoting it. The gatekeepers hardly matter anymore. Saturday Night Live performances and favorable Pitchfork reviews don't really move the needle. TikToks about those things. Chaotic Good ran a UGC campaign specifically to promote Oaklew's Tiny Desk performance. So in this new landscape, it's creating hundreds of fake accounts just par for the course or being just a good publicist.
Though their website gives next to no details aside from who their clients are, Chaotic Goods UGC, that's user-generated content, campaigns seem self-explanatory. Chaotic Good is paid to create accounts that generate content and simulate trends, which will ideally result in organic users generating content to further the trends themselves. Founders Jesse Corin and Andrew Spellman know that the internet is highly suggestible, which also happens to be the ethos of their narrative campaigns.
Yeah, and finally, Eliza ends the piece by talking about her own music. She talks about her own album that came out in October, and it didn't perform well, technically speaking. It's not hitting large streaming numbers. None of my shows sold out, and I'm all but waiting to see if this is the year it'll start putting me in serious debt. but I don't know what hundreds of millions of streams would mean to me, what it would feel like. How do I touch that? How do I grasp it?
Eliza says, when I'm on the road, the thought strikes me hundreds of times a day. This is real. I see a wild buffalo rub its face against the mountainside. This is real. A teenager in the front row cries to a song I wrote when I was her age. This is real. The cliffside in rural Washington takes the breath from my lungs. This is real. I listen to Love Takes Miles with the windows down and think about my best friend who I moved across the country to be near.
She's right. This is real. She says that my hands are on the fretboard. This is real. I run through the Badlands for the first time in my life, past the van, into the expanse. This is real. A sound escapes me and reaches you. This is real. This is real. This is real.
Right. You can read the entire piece in the Your Morning Coffee newsletter. A really great perspective and made you think for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, as we wrap up the show, I do want to thank our sponsors. Big thanks to our friends over at Hypebot and Bands in Town. We certainly appreciate their participation every week. By the way, if you want to advertise in the podcast and the newsletter, you can jump over to yourmorning.coffee to get more information. Music was by our friends the Licorice Quartet. And if you tell just one friend, Jay and I would certainly appreciate that. And darn it, thanks for listening, everyone. On behalf of my good friend Jay Gilbert, I'm Mike Etchart. We will be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.